This robotic puppy is so lifelike, it actually fooled. Hey, what's going on? You're here with Email, and this is For Democracy. And the reason why we're here today is we're going to be looking at the Epstein Files, just watching it, and just going over, I guess you could say, the good, the bad, the ugly, and just analyze what's currently happening, and then get a couple public what the people think about it. So we are going to be watching some YouTube, a couple of the live feeds we're going to watch, and then after we're done watching a few of the live feeds, we're then going to be diving into just really the TikTok as far as those how they feel about it. So before we begin, diving into current, let's talk about the concept of Epstein and what about his suicide that sounds fishy. So you remember that there was well, actually we're gonna let's go ahead and listen to it, and then we're gonna come back.
While he was some breaking news right now. Disgraced financier Jeffrey Epstein has taken his own life while he was behind bars here in New York City. Epstein was facing sex trafficking charges. NBC News investigative correspondent Tom Winter now has the very latest. Tom, what more do we know?
Peter, what we know now is that at 6:39 this morning, the fire department and EMS here in New York City got a phone call from MCC, which is a federal detention facility here in Manhattan in New York City, where Jeffrey Epstein was being held awaiting trial. They took him to New York's downtown hospital. He was in cardiac arrest, and he was pronounced there. What we know from officials that have been briefed on what happened, he was found and appeared that he had hung himself in his cell or wherever he was being held within MCC. And he was found by prison officials this morning, and that's when they reached out and they called EMS in unsuccessful attempts to revive him. So that happened early this morning. And right now, what we're trying to do is figure out if he was still on suicide watch, because there was an incident that occurred several weeks ago where he injured himself. It wasn't quite clear if that was an attempt on his life, an attempt to perhaps stage an attack. The details of that were never really kind of hashed out, if you will. So this morning there's some significant questions on how somebody who, it was such a high-profile defendant, somebody who had connections that went up to a current president, could be found dead, and how this could have happened.
Yeah, Tom, you're exactly right. Again, for our audience just joining us right now, NBC News has now confirmed that financier Jeffrey Epstein has taken his own life at a jail here in New York City. We will, of course, be following the latest developments over the course of this day.
We're back right after this.
Yeah, man, I'm just saying it seemed kind of fishy that he killed himself. Wow, he's such a high-profile person. I mean, if y'all can recall when they were talking about the video evidence, it was kind of shaky at best. But yeah, let's go ahead and continue on.
If you have dementia or are afraid you might have it, you shouldn't drink warm water, and I'll explain why. Hardly anyone knows this, but Alzheimer's and dementia have far less to do with age or genetics than we've been led to believe for years. And here comes the worst part of all. The
DOJ says that it has uncovered potentially over 1 million more Epstein-related files. And so the Justice Department released this information on Wednesday, and this was potentially found by the U.S. Attorney's Office for the Southern District of New York and the FBI, and they are currently reviewing them for release. And so, of course, we've been following this as the DOJ has since released thousands of new documents from the Epstein Files, earlier this week on Tuesday as well. And so to talk a little bit more about what we're seeing here with this potential new batch of files that the DOJ is going to be investigating, I want to bring into the conversation legal analyst Nima Rahmani. Nima, thanks so much for being with us here on Live Now from Fox. And so, Nima, I have to first ask you here, when it comes to the Epstein files and the DOJ now saying they potentially have 1 million more files that need to be released, does this surprise you at any point? What does this all mean now that they've said this?
Christina, I wish I could say I'm surprised, but this is another continued embarrassment for the Department of Justice. We are now 1 week removed from the December 19th deadline for the DOJ to produce the Epstein files, and obviously they have not met that deadline, at least in full. Now they're saying there's another 1 million documents that have yet to be reviewed. Let's not forget that Attorney General Pam Bondi earlier this year said that the Epstein files were sitting on her desk just waiting review. She promised to make them public well before the Epstein Files Transparency Act. Well, it seems like she didn't even have a full sense of the Epstein files, because I doubt she had 1 million documents sitting on her desk. And we're talking about the Southern District of New York. These are the career prosecutors who prosecuted Epstein the second time in 2000.
Yeah, man, I'm gonna have to call cap on that. For real, for real.
C-A-P. Cap. C-A-P. Cap. C.
Yeah. Moving on.
19. So of course they would have more documents. It's really shocking how disorganized and frankly late the DOJ has been, and they continue to, whether it's in terms of the redactions or delays or withholding documents outright, fail to follow the law. So it's very disappointing that those that are tasked to enforce the law can't even follow the law. I hope they can get their act together soon in the coming weeks.
And Nima, as we're talking about, I want to put up that statement that the Justice Department actually put out on their own X account talking about this, saying the U.S. Attorney for the Southern District of New York and the FBI have informed the Department of Justice that they have uncovered over 1 million more documents potentially related to the Jeffrey Epstein case. The DOJ has received these documents from the Southern District of New York and the FBI to review them for release and compliance with the Epstein Files Transparency Act, existing statutes, and judicial orders. We have lawyers who are working around the clock to review and make the legally required redactions to protect those victims, and we will release the documents as soon as possible. Due to the mass volume of material, this process may take a few more weeks. The department will continue to fully comply with federal law and President Trump's direction to release the files. Nima, I have to ask you, because it is interesting. You mentioned it. It was that deadline 1 week ago that the Epstein files were supposed to be released underneath the Epstein Transparency Act that President Trump signed. Is it not interesting that this comes about after that they say they found these 1 million more documents? Will we be able to know any true timeline of when they were discovered, or is it likely that this information is going to stay behind doors there with the Justice Department?
I don't think we'll know. And for folks that don't understand, the U.S. Attorney's Office in the Southern District of New York, it is part of the Department of Justice. Those are Department of Justice prosecutors. And if you're looking at where the Epstein files exist, you'd look to New York, you'd look to Miami. Those are the U.S. Attorney's Office that prosecuted Epstein. So the fact that you now have 1 million documents that had previously been unaccounted for, it leads me to believe that this search was not done in a timely manner, and those that conducted the search really did not do their job, because this should have been done weeks ago. Now you're stuck in a situation where the DOJ is further embarrassed. Some people will believe it's a cover-up. All of this delay, it just adds fuel to the fire. Those that are watching and who are on social media believe that this is all a cover-up to protect billionaires and politicians. So now you have this embarrassing situation where career prosecutors at the DOJ are being asked to work over the holidays to try to do these redactions and review these documents that frankly should have been done weeks ago, maybe even months ago, when the Department of Justice, Bondi, FBI Director Kash Patel, they promised to make the Epstein Files public well before the Epstein Files Transparency Act. So this should have already been done. Now you have further delays, you have more documents, you have redactions, pages, hundreds of pages that are redacted entirely. One other important deadline that we really should be talking about, Christina, is going to be in early January. That is when the DOJ is supposed to provide a log of any documents that are withheld or redacted. That will allow House Democrats to potentially challenge those redactions by filing a lawsuit in court, and a judge may have to sort through this to say, hey, are these redactions all warranted? Because if you look at the Epstein Files Transparency Act, there are only three categories of documents that can be redacted or withheld. Those are documents identifying victims of sex abuse, any documents showing sex abuse, that would essentially be child pornography, and anything related to an ongoing investigation. And we know that the DOJ issued a memo this summer in July saying there's no legal basis to charge any third parties related to the Epstein files. So I hope the DOJ isn't withholding documents on that basis, although Deputy Attorney General Todd Blanche did say the DOJ was going to assert privilege last weekend. That would be very disappointing if true.
And Nima, I'm glad you mentioned that, because that was my next question. Where do we go from here with the files that have been released?
So this was played 2 days ago, the day after Christmas. If you don't know, you're living behind a rock. The 19th, all these files are supposed to be given to us as far as full transparency, but instead, who would have thought a crook would not show you the evidence? So it's a lot of files that's been redacted, and we're going to look at a few more videos going over it for the most part. But this right here is like an intentional, on purpose, and just like Ramana said, he's basically a legal analyst. He's basically saying that a lot of these people have to work during Christmas break and New Year's to do something that they had over a month to do. So it's crazy.
Those heavy redactions have been a conversation not only on social media, but also happening in other forms as well. Many journalists have been critical of this as well. But when it comes to that, and you said there's a date that's going to be happening in January, there they can kind of challenge that. I was wondering if we were going to have to wait if there was going to be another administration to go back through, or some of these things sort of, is there another path, I should say, to figure out what's in some of the files that haven't been released?
There is a path, and that would be to file a lawsuit to compel the full production. And then what would happen is a federal judge, a district judge, would have to sort through these redactions himself or herself, or appoint a special master to do so. That's how you challenge redactions, because obviously we don't know what we don't know. But a judge can review the files in camera, that's a Latin term that means outside the presence of the parties and the public, to determine whether these redactions are warranted. I could tell you, Christina, I think they are excessive, and this is why. There's at least two categories of information that I've seen that appear to be redacted that shouldn't be redacted. The first is grand jury materials, and the judges that have considered this issue have ruled that the Epstein Files Transparency Act trumps, no pun intended, any secrecy that grand jury materials typically have under the rules of criminal procedure. Those materials should not be redacted. The other thing I see is the names of assistant U.S. attorneys, federal prosecutors, those names are being redacted. Again, there's not a legal basis to do so unless they are a victim of sex abuse, which is highly unlikely. Again, these redactions seem excessive. They seem outside of those three categories that I've talked about: victims, child pornography, and ongoing investigations, which I don't think there are any. So I wouldn't be surprised if at some point a lawsuit is filed and a judge reviews these redactions and determines that they are excessive and unwarranted.
And Nima, speaking of some of those redactions and lawsuits that could potentially be filed, we do know that the Democratic rep, Ro Khanna of California, says that he and the Republican rep, Thomas Massie of Kentucky, are going to be bringing charges of inherent contempt of Congress against Attorney General Pam Bondi. The two congressmen made that, of course, they were the one who sponsored the bill on the Epstein files, and they were also talking about potentially making this a larger thing against Attorney General Bondi. I have to ask you, what does that ultimately mean? And charges of inherent contempt of Congress, what potentially does that going to do for Attorney General Pam Bondi?
The world's first titanium nonstick pan. It's going to blow your...
All right, so we were going to continue off and continue on. The main thing that I got from that was the fact that it's three reasons to withhold information. One is if the person's in court. Another one would be if there's a child or someone who's been sexually assaulted. And the third one is, I'm not sure what the third one was, but at the same time, those are the three of the reasons. That's the reason why I'm watching this and trying to learn too. I'm not acting like I know everything. I'm really just giving my own opinion on it and just seeing if anybody else kind of agree. And if that, just, hey, if we do, we need to figure it out. And that's what we're doing now. Because my thing is the fact that when we talk about these people who support Trump, it's like it's nothing you can say to shake them off their loyalty, which is crazy. I feel that they're more loyal to their president than their significant other. That's neither here nor there. So this right here is enormous brain drain. Talking about the Justice Department bungles Epstein Files. It's probably talking about the redacted issues.
We begin this morning with the Justice Department that has spent the last 11 months going out of its way to protect the personal interests of the president. That appeared to be the case initially in the handling of the Epstein Files. But now, as it continues to release the documents in a steady drip, the DOJ is working against the president's interests in a manner that Politico calls the 2025 version of WikiLeaks. Instead of releasing all of the files 9 days ago as required by law, flooding the zone with documents possibly helping the White House move past this controversy, the DOJ has prolonged the damage, giving journalists like us time to pick through each partial release before the next one comes. And it seems like Trump might realize that his interests are not being served. He has continued to lash out on social media about the Epstein Files, including asking when the DOJ will say, quote, no more. Joining us now is Paul Butler, Georgetown law professor, MS Now legal analyst, and former federal prosecutor, and Joyce Vance, MS Now legal analyst and former U.S. attorney. Joyce, you also write a very good Substack, and I thought your latest that you wrote that published on December 27th was very interesting. I hadn't heard anyone say this. You look at the tweet from Donald Trump on the 25th, on Christmas Day, where he kind of goes through all of these things that seemingly he knows. And what you write here is, he looks like a witness to me. In a social media post, Trump offered up some specifics that he might have more information about. People who loved Jeffrey Epstein, people who gave Jeffrey Epstein bundles of money, people who went to Jeffrey Epstein's island in parties, why Trump dropped Jeffrey Epstein long before it became fashionable to do so. As Trump says, he dropped him like a dog. Joyce, this is fascinating. If you were a prosecutor in the case, if you were at the DOJ right now, it seems like you would want to talk to someone who seemingly has all this information.
Well, you absolutely would. Particularly, you'd want to know what led to the dissolution of the relationship, since that seems to have been something that in Donald Trump's mind was very important information about Jeffrey Epstein. Enough.
My whole thing about it, when you think about the secret letter or the beautiful secrets that they gave each other, it's like, it's so much history that they have with each other. It's kind of like you are trying to divorce your best friend, but your best friend and you know so much about each other. Even if you were to do it after a certain amount of time, we know that you think similar to each other. That's the reason why as soon as he stole one of his girls and as soon as he realized that, hey, this dude's into underage girls, that should have been the first and only time that he's seen that. If you are around and you see some underage people getting violated any kind of way and you stick around, that means you're complacent. That means that if you get caught up, that's on you. You know what I mean? It's kind of like, you know, you knew what was going on. And he basically helped them out in so many ways.
For him to abandon that relationship. But, we obviously don't live in a normal world. Neither Paul nor I are at the Justice Department. But that doesn't mean that there couldn't be situations where Trump would be a witness. Certainly, if something were to happen in Congress, like the midterm elections that led to investigative oversight hearings on the Hill, because Congress has a serious job here to write new laws to prevent this from happening in the future. And of course, theoretically, although very unlikely, they could seek testimony from the president. But there's also the possibility that we'll see renewed civil lawsuits based on some of this new information. And in that sort of a setting, the president could certainly be called as a witness, could be deposed, as he has been in other civil cases.
Paul, in addition to the potential information that President Trump may have that Joyce was laying out, the FBI is saying that, the Justice Department is saying that there's 1 million more documents that just seem to have appeared from the Southern District of New York, and the FBI. I mean, last I checked, the FBI was supposed to deliver all of the Epstein-related documents by February 28th of this year. That was, 10 months ago? So how does something like this happen? And is there any inspectors general that can look into it about how this happened, how these million documents went overlooked?
So the Epstein Files Transparency Act required that all of the documents, the complete file, be produced 9 days ago, December 19th. It didn't include an option for the Attorney General to turn in her homework late, basically whenever she feels like it. I think there are two things that are going on. One is they think that they can get away with what they're doing, with this slowly releasing whatever they feel like it, whenever they feel like it. They think that there won't be consequences, that the Republicans in Congress won't be demanding that they follow the law. But the other issue is they don't know what they're doing. And think about the work here. There's evidence at Main Justice, at FBI headquarters, at U.S. Attorney's offices in Florida and New York. So what have we seen? We've seen them release some materials, then hours later try to take some off the internet. Taking something off the internet isn't really a thing.
Not anymore, no.
But then they put them back on the internet, and sometimes they're in a different order, and we don't know why or what, because they don't say.
And let's not forget the fact that when they have these redactions, and people were on TikTok putting the redactions, we have this from Wall Street Journal. And yet another snafu, it was soon discovered that some of the redacted materials could be unredacted simply by copying and pasting them into a new document. Within days, internet sleuths were posting the workaround on social media alongside withering criticism of the government. Some Epstein files can be redacted with this trick. They are so incompetent, posted one Instagram user. Joyce, this feels like amateur hour. Like the redacting of documents, in this case, in every case, and you can tell me if I'm wrong, is to protect survivors and victims, to protect the innocent, is to protect maybe sources and methods when it's a national security issue. And usually people take that very serious, and you're not just able to copy and paste it into a document with the workaround. What happened here?
So yeah,
this AI can
like
forecast U.S. stock prices to the penny. This is where it's
essentially where the person is either a victim, or they're trying to protect the source, or some kind of court thing going on. To my understanding, that's kind of like what he was saying. And let's go ahead and continue on.
Yeah, I mean, it's not just a serious matter. There are some legal protections, for instance, for personally identifying information. And although this problem didn't exist throughout the release, there were some documents where control paste didn't work to reveal what was underneath the redactions. There were some instances where it did, which suggests that the process is hasty and poorly supervised. There's been an enormous brain drain at the Justice Department.
Yeah.
And that affects not just top-level prosecutors, but it also impacts staff who are very skilled at accomplishing this sort of process, which is really bread and butter work for the Justice Department, which engages in discovery to opposing parties in its cases on a daily basis. This one is a little bit unusual. It's going to Congress, but that lack of expertise is really showing at an institution that in essence is the world's biggest law firm and one that we're used to expecting a great deal of competence from.
Yeah, that brain drain, we were on the show yesterday, apparently 2,900, I think was the number, of different types of prosecutors and attorneys have left the DOJ.
2,900 people, that's
alone,
crazy.
Which is usually 4 times what it was last year.
Right, and Joyce, I want to ask you about one of the redactions in particular, about this photo of President Trump with Ghislaine Maxwell, the convicted sex trafficker. It was found on Steve Bannon's cell phone. That's his former chief of staff during his first term, and it was redacted in the release. A federal investigator emailed another investigator saying, as I was going through the images from that phone, I found an image of Trump and Ghislaine Maxwell on Bannon's phone. We wanted to flag this in case it was of importance, but the photo was redacted. Why redact that photo? Is this normal procedure at all?
Right, and so the reality is we don't know. Typically, redactions are made to protect, for instance, the identity of victims or survivors. We don't know if there's a third person pictured in that photograph. It doesn't seem to be the case. And so it's difficult to reject the notion that perhaps this is more to protect Donald Trump than it is for some other sort of reason that would normally lead to a redaction. Of course, the Justice Department owes, on the 15th day after the release was due, they owe an explanation to Congress of what they've done and what they haven't done. If Congress has any backbone at all and willingness to enforce the law that it passed here, the Epstein Transparency Act, then I think we can expect to see the Attorney General on the Hill testifying to explain situations like this particular redaction.
You know, one of the things that is really interesting, I think maybe probably to all of us, especially us in the show, when I read into the segment, the thing that's been gnawing at us is the President of the United States and his team usually flood the zone. This is the drip, drip, drip of this information, and it makes it easier for us to go through it, but it also, Paul, causes less trust and more questions about who is protecting whom, right? What's being hidden? Maybe there's nothing being hidden, right? But that doesn't stop this kind of thing circulating all of this, right? Besides the people who already believe a lot of conspiracy theories and the questions, but like real questions about what's in this what in all these documents. Had they just released it all, we'd still be probably digging through to find, you know, the proverbial needle in a haystack.
Yeah, so the Attorney General and the Deputy Attorney General continue to act like their most important government responsibility is to protect Donald Trump. So remember, the Attorney General represented Trump in his first impeachment. The Deputy Attorney General represented Trump in the Manhattan hush money trial. And now the American people have to rely on their integrity and their good faith that they're now representing the interests of the United States and not their former client, Donald Trump.
Yeah, man, it's a dark day for us, man. America is a dark day for us. So, just one thing I have to remind everyone about is a comment that Megyn Kelly said. And this right here, it really grinds my gears. So just listen to what she's saying and tell me if you agree with her or you
Let's talk about why multi-family investing is exploding and why now is the smartest time to get in. The data is clear. Demand for rental units is
giving you facts.
The fallout from the Jeffrey Epstein file release was on President.
Yeah, man, this is kind of crazy. Just like my thing is like if you ever have a friend that violates a child, even if it wasn't in front of you, you need to be smart, leave that person alone. If they start talking about jokes, it's kind of like whatever. You like ha ha ha. You kind of question, and if them answers don't come up the way they need to go, you need to cut that friend off. And I just feel like when it comes down to it, yeah, he didn't like no 8-year-old, quote unquote, but 15 is still not old enough.
The fallout from the Jeffrey Epstein file release was on President Trump's mind over Christmas. He used one of his dozens of holiday posts to wish, quote, Merry Christmas to all, including the many sleazebags who loved Epstein. It comes as the Justice Department now says it has uncovered more than 1 million additional documents potentially related to the case, and that it may need a few more weeks to review and release them to the public. Under the law signed by President Trump in November, all the DOJ Epstein documents were supposed to be released last Friday. Joining me now is Nick Ackerman. He was an assistant special Watergate prosecutor and a former assistant U.S. attorney for the Southern District of New York. All right, so these Epstein files, they go back decades, right?
Correct.
How can something like this happen where the DOJ on Christmas Eve, mind you, suddenly says, hey, we're now become aware of more than 1 million more files potentially related to Epstein that it's going to take us weeks now to send out to the public?
Total nonsense. They had to know that these files existed right from the get-go. First of all, we know that prior to May of this year, Pam Bondi had lots of FBI agents going through all of these files to determine whether President Trump's name was in these documents. So she knew where the documents were. But on top of that, even more glaring is the fact that all of these documents, they had to know were in the Southern District of New York that prosecuted the Maxwell and Epstein criminal cases.
Why is that?
Because when you're a prosecutor, you are obliged, you're commanded to return over to the defense exculpatory evidence under a Supreme Court decision known as Brady. And in order to do that, you have to get every file that's in the federal government, whether it's in the FAA or some other agency, they have to be under your control so you can comply with your Brady obligations. And certainly Todd Blanche, who was in charge of this whole matter, was a former assistant U.S. attorney in the Southern District of New York. He should have known that. So they had to know that these were there. There's no excuse for it.
All right, I do want to ask you about the process of going through these documents to make the redactions, which can be a tedious thing. Is it any surprise with the number of years this case has gone on, with the number of victims in this case, that it didn't meet its deadline, that the DOJ was not able to put everything out?
Well, they should have been able to because they knew who the victims were. It's a matter of just putting a black mark over people who are victims. That was it. There's certainly nothing in there for national security. There's no other really valid reason not to turn over all this information. This should have taken no time at all. They should have been able to do it in that month. They knew where the documents were. This is just a lame excuse.
I do want to ask you, you've gotten bipartisan criticism of how this Pam Bondi has handled this, how her office has handled the release of these files. What do you think it is doing as far as the way people feel towards the DOJ, the public trust?
Oh, I think the public trust is completely dissolved. There is no public trust in the DOJ anymore, whether it's appearing in court before judges or whether it's just what they're doing with the public and telling the public what they have or don't have. I think she's got zero credibility at this point.
And when it comes to how these were put out, you had all of this back and forth where a couple of times the DOJ put documents out, then they rescinded them saying there are some issues here that we need to do some redactions, and they put a hugely redacted where you couldn't see anything, just pages and pages that were darkened. I mean, is this a normal process for putting out information to the public?
Not at all. Even when you do a federal Information Act request, you get things back that are redacted. You saw the Mueller report, that was redacted, but it's just little bits and pieces so that you can't understand something that might relate to personal information or be really confidential on another investigation. There's none of that here. I mean, this is stuff that goes back to 2010 and before that they should have had ready to produce at the moment that law passed. I mean, there's no excuse for any of this.
They were given a month, and there are a lot of documents, but they also had some inference that this was coming because it was discussed over and over and over again, and then Congress finally passed the law. The president signed it. Nick Ackerman, thank you for giving us some insight into how this should work and how you see it breaking down. We really do appreciate it.
Former federal prosecutor Elise Adams is joining the chat. So Elise, first let's look at this. I think it was surprising to a number of people that all of a sudden there are another 1 million documents here that they will need to go through. Did that surprise you?
Well, Eric, I think from a process standpoint, this seems to indicate more of a diligence issue than a cover-up. Look, the amount of documents don't surprise me because what's happened here is the searches have expanded. We aren't talking just about narrow searches related to a case against Jeffrey Epstein. We are now talking about searches related to every possible mention of Jeffrey Epstein. So when this law was passed back in November, DOJ was going to have to cast a wider net for all possible relevant documents. So we knew that there was going to be voluminous. The issue is timing, because they've had over a month, and we're now hearing that there's over 1 million documents. So for me, sloppy, maybe. Suspicious, not necessarily.
But let me just follow up on that point, because based on your experience, right, as a former federal prosecutor, given the fact that, yes, the law was passed in November, but DOJ essentially knew this was coming. They knew that there was this push. It had been going on for months, even though it took a while to get there. Is this something that, in your experience, if there was a big issue coming down the pike, that DOJ would have been preparing for and would have been reaching out to the SDNY, for example, to say, we need you to just start getting ready?
If you live in a Georgia zip code and have 0 DUIs in the last 5 years, listen carefully.
Well, Erica, that's an interesting question. I think, look, they did know this was coming down the pike. That's why I said this was a diligence issue, right? Would it have made sense, especially knowing that the legislation was likely to pass, to get everybody at the ready? You know, DOJ is saying they have hundreds of attorneys working on this round the clock. So it would have made sense to do those things earlier. You know, and in my experience, we were extremely diligent. But that being said, the DOJ was not required to do this until the law passed, and now they have to comply. And it seems like their compliance has been hindered by those internal processes. So it's very hard to speculate, and you know, it's hard to draw a comparison because this is an unprecedented situation. But that being said, to say you now need more weeks to comply with the law where the deadline was December 19th, again, indicates that they have not been as diligent as they should be, and they should be continuing to work round the clock to satisfy their obligations under this law.
And Ashley, there's been a lot of pushback on that this in fact is an unforced error, specifically if we just look at it from the perspective of survivors. I've spoken with a number of survivors, both prior to the release and then in the last week since these documents have come out, as well as their attorneys. Their frustration is that they're hearing from Todd Blanche, this is all about transparency and we want to protect the victims. They were not notified. They have not really, they feel, been considered in all of this. Is this, I mean, I guess I go back to Ashley, is this an unforced error?
Well, first of all, I think you're exactly right, Erica. The survivors are the most important part of this story, and protecting them is absolutely the #1 priority. But however, I don't know if you've seen, I'm sure you have, is that they've been asking for volunteers of former people that are in the prosecutor's office or formerly in the prosecutor's office to work over the holiday to try to speed up these new 1 million documents that were given to them from the Southern District of New York and the FBI. I think that, as it was mentioned, that you had to wait until the law was passed. They weren't going to pre-do it. But the bottom line is this just feeds into this conspiracy theory that has been starting. Listen, the Republicans started this, there was a lot there, there's more there, we should do this. And so it's just continuing that story, which, you know, is not good at all, I think, for the survivors.
Not good at all for the survivors. Eugene, is it also in some ways, based on what we're seeing, the delays that we've seen, now the new documents, Eugene, is it also taking away from perhaps what should be the focus, which is maybe there's a frustration with the DOJ and its conduct, but this is about Jeffrey Epstein's conduct and the impact that it had on hundreds and hundreds of women?
Well, I think there's actually enough time to focus on both of those issues. We're talking about victims here who feel like they've been violated and not respected by their government or their elected officials, that some of them, I imagine, supported with the hope and belief that justice would be served. But the ongoing concern since before Donald Trump even returned to Washington, that the Justice Department would be more focused on working for him instead of the American people, is just one that is not anywhere near close to being addressed or at least eradicated considering this. Concerns about transparency, concerns about honesty and independence are being question, even on the right, even some of the people who wanted to support Trump and believed that he would handle things in a way that it doesn't seem like he currently is. And so I think both of those issues are issues that will continue.
One thing I have to say, a way the justice is working, the Justice Department is working more like its personal lawyers and not the Department of Justice, meaning that they're not looking out for the people's best interests. But at the same time, when half of them were your personal lawyers before you got in, what do you expect? You know, little comedy.
Where are the rest of the Epstein Files? We released 100,000 pages last week and just released thousands more. As a note, some of them make sensationalist claims against President Trump that are untrue and false. We need more time. We already gave you 30 days. The pages are going to take weeks to redact. Then we'll hold Pam Bondi in contempt. Okay. Here's the thing. You're picking and choosing what you want to release. We want to see all the evidence so we can get justice for the victims. For example, in 1996, a woman made a claim that Epstein allegedly possessed and distributed child pornography, but there was no federal investigation for that until a decade later. That same woman, an employee of Epstein, told police and the FBI that Epstein and his girlfriend, Ghislaine Maxwell, sexually assaulted her. The FBI never publicly acknowledged her original report. We'll give Bondi a 30-day grace period. After that, we'll probably fine her daily until everything's released. We think that's the quickest way to get justice for the victims. Until then, we'll keep asking.
Looking for a pool deck that's safe when wet and stays cool in the summer? That's RevaFlex. We transform cracked, slippery concrete into a beautiful...
The Justice Department.
You shot the killer of Baton Rouge?
Yeah, so let's have some fun. So I like that one. That was cute. Let's go ahead and move on to some more news.
And has finally released some of the highly anticipated Epstein Files. More than 300,000 pages of documents related to the late convicted sex offender were made public today. They include photos, flight logs, grand jury testimony, and a lot of heavy redactions. Among the photos is this one of pop superstar Michael Jackson with Epstein, and this dinner photo showing Mick Jagger and former President Bill Clinton together. News Nation is digging through the documents. We'll give you the latest breaking news as we find it. But if you think this means it's now case closed, think again. The DOJ was under orders by law to release all the Epstein files by midnight tonight. And even though the DOJ released 300,000 files today, Deputy Attorney General Todd Blanche said there are at least a few 100,000 more that have still not been released. Blanche says the DOJ needs more time to make redactions to protect victims. He says the rest of the files will be released on a rolling basis over the next few weeks. Some lawmakers say that violates the law that was signed by President Trump 30 days ago. So now some top Democrats, including Senator Chuck Schumer, are threatening serious legal consequences. Let's go right now to News Nation's Joe Khalil, live for us on Capitol Hill. Joe, break down what you're learning and what Democrats are threatening.
So first, I think we just have to say, and you set it up well, there are two real storylines here. One is what is in these files that we can see and that we can actually learn. We're going to get on that first. There's also the story about what is not in these files or what is heavily redacted, because that is also sparking a nerve. When it comes to what's in these files, we've seen dozens of new photos we haven't seen before of Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell with very high-profile people, celebrities, people like Mick Jagger and Michael Jackson, like you showed, also like British royalty and actors. All of that we sort of knew was happening. I want to highlight specifically two for the public interest, and that is President Clinton and President Trump in these files. We've got new images now, some showing President Clinton in a pool with Ghislaine Maxwell and a person who is redacted. Now, we know some of the redactions are because people are underage or because people are victims. We don't know anything about these people in these specific photos other than they're redacted, but this is getting a lot of attention here. Then President Trump. You see pictures of what look like a drawer.
Now, honestly, I'm not like, I love Bill Clinton, but I ain't about to protect him if he dealing with kids. You know what I mean? He could be president right now if he dealing with kids. We on that backside. And that is the clear difference of a lot of Republicans and Democrats. Republicans, I mean, in order to get this power, y'all would sell out your mama. You sell your daughter if you had to. That's what it seemed like. Because If you go and say out of your words, I don't care if he was in them files, and you know it has a lot to do with child PD and all that other stuff that is encapsulates, and you cool with that, you need to get your morals checked.
With several photos in them of President Trump before he was president, younger version of himself, and several women there, as you see, some of them not wearing a whole lot of clothing. President Trump is also referenced several times in flight logs, and in some cases, even with his former wife, Marla, and his daughter, Tiffany, who would have been a child at the time, and a nanny traveling along with Epstein that were in these files. Beyond that, there is a lot of material in here that is just uncomfortable, sadly, as we might expect. There's pornographic material, magazines, that type of thing, sex toys, images like that. There are also a lot of references to massages. There is a Massage for Dummies book that was highlighted here that our team found. There was also a letter handwritten talking about a younger girl who was an artist, and she took pictures of her two sisters, 16 years old and 12 years old, that Jeffrey Epstein apparently stole, according to this note, and then threatened to burn the girl's house down if she told that Jeffrey Epstein had stolen these pictures and had given them to clients, as it says in the note. So it's just a lot of really disturbing things. Congressman Ro Khanna today, who was one of the driving forces behind releasing these photos, has been in touch with the Epstein victims and survivors for quite some time. He talked about what they want to see out of these documents and what they want to come out of this release. This is what he said earlier today.
From the survivors who I've talked to, they are appreciative that finally they're being heard, they're being seen, and documents are coming out. But what they care most about is that the documents come out that expose the rich and powerful men who either raped them, abused them, or were at these sex parties watching them be abused.
And Elizabeth, just want to mention, there are whole sections that are completely redacted. There's one grand jury report. Presumably there would be a lot of interesting and important information in there. 119 pages, literally every page of that blacked out, redacted, and there are several files like that. So again, people have already been expressing some frustration over those.
Yeah.
Thank you for watching. Subscribe below and download our News Nation app right now on your phone, and you will get fact-based, unbiased news for all Americans.
I hear you, Como.
The House just officially voted to release the Epstein Files with only one Republican voting no. But not only has the getting here been very messy, but what comes next could be just as chaotic. Because for months, Trump called the Epstein issue a Democrat hoax, he distanced himself, and he attacked Republicans pushing for transparency. But then, over the weekend, when he realized he was going to lose the vote, he urged House Republicans to back the Epstein Files Transparency Act. And this morning, ahead of the vote, you had survivors and lawmakers speaking outside of the Capitol, many directing their frustration at Trump, one survivor questioning his motives, saying she's traumatized, not stupid, and accusing him of dragging out the process. Others slammed his shifting position, calling it political and a national embarrassment. And you had Marjorie Taylor Greene seemingly implying that she now sees him as a traitor.
Called me a traitor for standing with these women and refusing to take my name off the discharge petition. Let me tell you what a traitor is. A traitor is an American that serves foreign countries.
But also you had Speaker Mike Johnson blasting this effort as a political stunt. Ray Johnson arguing that the bill lacks privacy protections and urging the Senate to amend it. A move that's sparked outrage from lawmakers leading the push, warning that amendments would betray survivors and risk shielding powerful people. Though also with today's vote, you have many worrying that the public may still end up seeing very little. And in fact, some think that Trump ordered the DOJ to investigate Democrats to block access to certain files. But hey, for now, follow to stay in the loop.
I don't believe he committed suicide. I spent time with Jeffrey, and he's an egotistical maniac.
Haley Robson is one of the women recruited by Jeffrey Epstein for sex. She was 16 years old, a high school student at the time, when she first met the man who would be accused of sex trafficking.
It was a room inside of his master bedroom, and there was a steam shower, a steam room, and he came out in a towel. I ended up in my underwear.
How did you end up in your underwear? Did he ask you to take your clothes off?
Yes. He asked me to take off my skirt.
Haley said Epstein made her a proposition.
He just looked at me and said, well, you can bring me your friends, and for every friend that you bring me, I will compensate you.
So he was going to pay you to bring other young girls?
Correct.
How much?
$200
per girl?
Per child, per girl.
Haley agreed, and for 2 years, she recruited girls like herself for Epstein.
I think at the moment it was an act of me trying to just survive and get out of the situation because I didn't know what to expect next. I think I brought around 8 to 10 girls, but I brought them to his house more than one time.
She doesn't believe Epstein, who was found dead in his New York jail cell in 2019, died by suicide.
I don't think he's the type of person that's capable of doing something like that because he does think of himself so highly and that he can just buy his way out of things.
Allergy meds were draining my wallet. Hoping it would cure my dog Minnie.
Yeah, so again, man, I'm with the belief that when it comes down to it, yeah, man, that man ain't kill himself. I mean, let's be honest. A lot of egotistical people, they don't do that. So right now, we're just going on looking at a live. This is the Epstein Files live. Just seeing what they got to talk about. Apparently, they talk about Trump banning and Bill Clinton. We're probably going to watch about 10 minutes of it and then move on with life.
Has, and certainly for the foreseeable future, much more, it's a terrible situation.
Sam, so on that prison transfer, incredibly controversial because unprecedented in terms of her going from the level of prison she was to this one, given the nature of her conviction and her crimes. Days after she met with Todd Blanche, the Deputy Attorney General Todd Blanche just spoke about this and the whole transfer itself. Here's what he said. I wanted to play it for you.
At the time that I met Ms. Maxwell, there was a tremendous amount of scrutiny and publicity towards her, and the institution she was in, she was suffering numerous threats against her life. So the BOP is not only responsible for putting people in jail and making sure they stay in jail, but also for their safety. And so she was moved. She is in federal prison. She was in federal prison before. She's in federal prison now.
But of course, now she's in a minimum security prison where inmates can work in the community, all sorts of things, which someone convicted of trafficking underage girls would not be. What do you say to that entire explanation?
So I absolutely agree with Mr. Blanche that it is the obligation and responsibility of the prison to keep their inmates safe and secure. Transferring prisoners happens all the time. I have clients that cooperate, and one thing or another happens to them, they're transferred, but they're transferred laterally. They're transferred from one camp to another camp. They're transferred from one low security facility to another low security facility. There are probably at least a half a dozen other low security women's prisons in the country that she could have gone to. It is unheard of, from my experience, to have someone with two safety factors, one of which was the sex charge, to be transferred from a low security to a minimum security facility. So, yes, he's right.
Yeah.
Right.
All right. Well, I appreciate your time, and thank you so much, Sam. It's good to talk to you again.
Breaking news tonight on how the Justice Department is trying to speed up the release of the Epstein files, days after the deadline passed for them all to be made public. More on that in just a moment. Today, more than 30,000 files released from the investigation of convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein. One of the things we learned is that prosecutors in 2019 sought to investigate and potentially charge upwards of 10 possible co-conspirators. Another document purportedly showed a letter handwritten by Epstein while he was in jail in 2019, the same month he committed suicide. It is signed by J. Epstein and addressed to convicted sex offender Larry Nassar. Now, it does not explicitly name President Trump, but includes a reference to our president, and Trump was president at the time. But late this afternoon, the Justice Department released this post. The FBI has confirmed this alleged letter from Jeffrey Epstein to Larry Nassar is fake. The FBI made this conclusion based on the following facts. The writing does not appear to match Epstein's handwriting. The letter was postmarked 3 days after Epstein's death, postmarked out of Northern Virginia when he was jailed in New York. The return address did not list the jail where Epstein was held and did not include his inmate number, which is required for outgoing mail. The Post also says that just because a document is released by the Department of Justice, it does not mean the allegations are true. Some of the files released today do contain the president's name. For example, one email dated from 2020 from an assistant U.S. attorney for the Southern District of New York noted that Trump flew on Epstein's private jet many more times than previously reported, many more times than they knew, at least 8 times between 1993 and 1996. President Trump has not been accused of any criminal wrongdoing related to Epstein. Still, the department put out a statement today that reads as if it was a letter from his personal lawyer, calling some claims about the president in the documents released today untrue and sensationalist, and went on to say if they had a shred of credibility, they certainly would have been weaponized against President Trump already. Now, they did not say anything like this when they released photos and references to Bill Clinton on Friday, which of course was when the Epstein Files Transparency Act mandated that all the Epstein files be released, but only a portion were made public then. The Justice Department has come under criticism for the delay and the extensive redactions of the material. Some Democrats accuse the department of attempting to cover up information unfavorable to the president, and survivors, some, are outraged by the whole process.
I am so disgusted with this administration. I think that Pam Bondi and Kash Patel both need to resign, and I would love to see number 47 get impeached over this. I don't trust my government. I don't trust the redactions. I don't trust the DOJ.
CNN senior crime and justice reporter Caitlin Polance joins us now. And Caitlin, it's literally been from dawn until dusk for you on this story today. You've got some new reporting on the lengths that the Justice Department is going to in order to go through more of these files.
Yeah, in an email I just reviewed from a source showing what is going on inside the Justice Department right now to try and get these hundreds of thousands, if not more, documents redacted in the Epstein files and getting them out to the public. The Justice Department, they need volunteers, more attorneys to work on this. They're saying it's an emergency, even after that transparency deadline already passed on Friday, and they knew that that deadline was coming for a full 30 days when Congress passed the law right around Thanksgiving. And this also raises the possibility that more documents from the Epstein files will become public over the next several days, including over the Christmas holidays, the New Year's holiday. I want to read for you a little bit of what is in this email. So this is an email from a top prosecutor in the Southern District of Florida's U.S. Attorney's Office, writing to everybody in that office. And the email says, it's an emergency request from the Deputy Attorney General's office that the SDFL, that U.S. Attorney's Office in Florida, must assist with. We need AUSAs, so career prosecutors, line attorneys, to do remote document review and redactions related to the Epstein files. I am aware that the timing could not be worse. For some, the holidays are about to begin, but I know that for others, the holidays are coming to an end. That's the end of the quote from this email. But this really highlights, John, the situation the Justice Department is in, blowing past that deadline, still having documents to redact, and needing more people to get it done. Remember, there's another deadline coming up for the Justice Department to tell Congress what all they have redacted, explaining it, and just now, several days heading after the deadline that Congress set for transparency, heading into the Christmas holiday, they are trying to get more people to volunteer their time to go through these files, redact them, and get them online for the public to look at.
This is not what the law said. I mean, the law said they were supposed to all be out.
Listen, it's called Connect Team, and it's insane. I don't do schedule.
Yeah, man.
And
if you notice,
Director Patel said,
when it comes down to it, they're doing illegal activity, and we need to really put their feet to the fire and let them know. And the main reason I say this because if Biden was doing this, you would not hear the end of it. The Republicans would be down his throat and really be trying to, cast them out like he Frankenstein. But that's neither here nor there. What they say, blame Biden, but it's kind of like, it's crazy trying to blame the old guy while everybody is in your position. Everybody in their position is because of you, and you influence everything. All right, so that is what the live that we did with, I believe it was CBS or NBC, one of those two. Now we're...
that there was no evidence that Tom Homan committed a crime. Yet now you're putting his picture up to slander him
No, I'm
as
putting,
much
I'm
as
putting
you
his
can.
picture up,
You know,
showing an interview he gave with, I think, Fox, in which he was asked explicitly about these allegations that he took a $50,000 bribe, and he refused to answer. He said he didn't answer the question whether he took the money, so I'm asking you the question: did he take the money?
Senator Schiff, I answered that question multiple times. And frankly, you know.
Well, I don't think, with respect, I don't think you did, but in case I just didn't hear you, what is the answer? Did he take the money?
Senator Schiff, that happened prior to my confirmation as Attorney General. I said that.
Do you know, sitting here, whether
All
he
I
took the money?
know is that Deputy Attorney General Todd Blanche and FBI Director Patel said there was no case. And Caroline Levitt is one of the most trustworthy human beings I know.
So
And,
was she?
you know,
was
Senator
she?
Schiff,
Was she
if
right?
you work for
Trust me, bro. Trust me. That's all I'm hearing.
me,
Was she-
you would have been fired because
excuse
you
me.
were censured
No,
by Congress for lying with your
We can
egregious
stipulate to. You can stipulate to all your personal attacks on the Democratic members of the committee.
personal attacks. You've been
So-
attacking
so-
my FBI director. You've been attacking my office. You've been attacking.
What we're interested
The
in.
borders
What
are.
we're interested in is the answer to these oversight questions.
Want your
So
no,
you were
oversight.
asked
want
you were
your
asked
5
by my
minutes of
colleague.
fame
You were asked by my colleague.
attacking good people.
Regular order, Madam Chair, so I can ask a question. You were asked by my colleague from Vermont
Oh my God.
whether you were support providing a video or audio tape, if it exists, of Mr. Holman taking $50,000 in bribe money from the FBI. Will you support a request by this committee to provide that tape or tapes to the committee? Yes or no?
Senator Schiff, you can talk to Director Patel about that.
Well, I'm talking to you about it. You're the Attorney General. This will be your decision. Will you
You
support?
don't have to tell me what is my decision and what is
then-
not my
then-
decision.
then-
I
and you-
said
and
you
you
can
don't
talk
have
to
to-
Director
you don't
Patel.
have to try to-
You think
you
you
don't
got a
have to-
gotcha with Tom Home and our
Excuse me,
borders
excuse me, you
who's
don't-
been out there
excuse me.
fighting for our country
Madam
since
Chair,
Donald Trump took office.
I'm trying to ask you a question. Regular order, please. And you don't have to defer to the FBI director to pass the buck. So I'm asking you, will you support a request so that the committee, or indeed I believe the American people, should be able to see that video or audio tape? Will you support that request?
Will you apologize to Donald Trump
So
for
I guess
trying to impeach
the answer
him
is you won't support that
after
request.
you now know that
So
Joe
let me-
Biden tried
let me
to cover up
do
Hunter
this.
Biden's involvement with
Excuse
Ukraine?
me. Let me do this, because I think it's valuable that the American people get a sense of what you've refused to answer today. So these are just some of the questions you refused to answer, or have answered with personal attacks on members of this committee. You were asked whether you consulted with career ethics lawyer, as you promised you would do during your nomination hearing, when you approved the president receiving a $400 million gift from the Qataris. You refused to answer that question. You were asked who or what role you may have played, or who played the role in asking that Trump's name be flagged in any of the Epstein documents gathered by the FBI. You refused to answer that question. You were asked whether Holman kept the $50,000 bribe money. You refused to answer that question. You were asked whether Holman paid taxes on the $50,000 bribe money. You refused to answer that question. You were asked, did career prosecutors find insufficient evidence to charge James Comey? You refused to answer that question. You were asked, how are military strikes on these boats in the Caribbean legal? And you refused to even answer that question. You were asked, excuse me. You were asked, did you discuss indicting James Comey with the president? You refused to answer that question. You were asked, did you approve the firing of antitrust lawyers who disagreed with the Hewlett-Packard merger? You refused to answer that question. You were asked whether you support a restoration fund for violent insurrections to attack the Capitol on January 6th. You refused to answer that question. You were asked whether you were firing career professionals, career prosecutors, just because they worked on January 6th investigations. You refused to answer that question. You were asked by my California colleague whether you believe government officials, like immigration officials, have to abide by court orders. You wouldn't even answer that question. This is supposed to be an oversight hearing.
Oversight?
Excuse me, you can attack me after my time is over.
You've attacked all of us, including President Trump, for your entire
You can attack me later,
career.
and I know you've got plenty of canned attacks. We've heard them all.
This is.
Oh my goodness! Hey man, your girl, she's ready. I'm telling you, she's ready. Like she is ready to die on the blade for this man. I'm telling you. Shoot, let's go ahead here.
Actually, we're all tickled to hear you say that. Quite frankly, watching Donnie beat Nazis to death is as close we ever get to going to the movies. Donnie! Yeah? Guy's German here wants to die for country. Oblige him. You better killing Jews. Bravery.
Yeah, man, she ready to die for country, for real. That's neither here nor there. Let's go ahead and keep hearing these lies. I hate to be her husband.
This is supposed
No one needs a canned attack on you.
Regular order, Madam Chair. I'm trying to speak. This is supposed to be an oversight hearing of the Justice Department. And it comes in the wake of an indictment called for by the president of one of his enemies. This is supposed to be an oversight hearing, and it comes in the wake of revelations that a top administration official took $50,000 in a bag, and this department made that investigation go away. This is supposed to be an oversight hearing when dozens of prosecutors have been fired simply because they worked on cases investigating the former president. This is, and now the current president.
What about the fires in California?
And
Do you
this
care
is
about that,
supposed to be,
Senator Schiff?
this is supposed to be an oversight hearing in which members of Congress can get serious answers to serious questions about
Are the riots in LA serious?
About the cover-up of corruption, about the prosecution of the president's enemies. And
I think you owe the president an apology.
When will it be
Your entire career,
that the members of this committee on a bipartisan basis demand answers to those questions and refuse to accept
Clearly you're a failed lawyer because you don't understand when someone can and cannot answer a question.
Personal slander as an answer to those questions.
Personal slander?
With
Will
that,
you
Madam Chair,
apologize to
I
Donald
yield
Trump
back.
for slandering him? Personal slander.
Senator.
May I ask unanimous consent, Madam Chair, to introduce into the record the statement of 1,000 former Justice Department officials who warned that the Comey indictment is a democracy-threatening abuse of power. May I also request unanimous consent for the introduction into the record of 282 former career officials at the Justice Department raising an alarm who were voluntarily or involuntarily forced to leave the department because of improper actions taken by the Department of Justice. May I introduce with unanimous consent the Justice Department manual that talks about when initiating and declining charges are subject to impermissible considerations. And finally, Madam Chair, may I introduce the letter from Michael Ben-Ari, a career counterterrorism prosecutor, DOJ, a letter he nailed to his door, which concludes by urging officials to do the right thing for the right reasons, to follow the facts and the law, and raises the alarm that the decision to remove experienced career officials from U.S. attorneys' offices, the FBI, and critical parts of DOJ undermines our country's abilities to counter terrorist organizations, malign nation-state actors, and countless others that seek to harm our nation and its citizens. And he believes that the priority is prosecuting the president's enemies rather than protecting the country.
One moment.
May I have unanimous consent to enter these into the record?
Without objection.
Thank you. I yield back.
Senator Brett.
Senator Moody, may I clarify one thing he entered in the record? I just want to say that I believe he entered a letter by 200 and something former employees. Well, I believe the spokesperson for that letter was also the spokesperson for Jack Smith.
Senator Brett. Thank you, Madam Chair. General Bondi, I want to talk to you about the next generation. I want to talk to you about our kids, people who don't have a seat at the table but need us to fight for them tirelessly. When you look at this, I see a couple of different buckets of ways that bad actors are taking advantage of our children, and in some of the most extreme situations, we lose that child, whether to death or to self-harm. And I think we owe it to them to do something about it. So first is social media. Tell me, what are you doing? I have sat across from a number of parents who have talked to me about their child either falling victim to sextortion, different schemes that are online. We also know that there is an element of human trafficking that comes here. Let's start with social media. What are you doing to hold bad actors accountable, to track them down, and to keep our kids safe?
Senator, first, thank you for bringing that up. This, I believe, is what an oversight hearing should be about. Not yell, oh, he's gone already. He comes in and leaves. This is what an oversight hearing should be about, trying to help parents and children online. Yes, Director Patel has been doing a great job. The FBI, we have an entire unit. Not only that, our National Security Division is working internationally.
Well, and I want to talk about that too, because I think a lot of this comes from overseas.
Yes.
And so whether it's these schemes, the sextortion schemes,
Yes.
et cetera, it's happening off our shores. How are you connecting the dots there? And then additionally, let's look at human trafficking. And you find a number of times people are lured into this from posts on social media. I believe that is a global trafficking ring. I would like to speak to what are you doing to make sure that you're holding those people accountable and getting to the bottom of it, finding bad actors and making sure that we're keeping these children safe.
Senator Britt, we have made countless cases around this country, and many of them have involved global, international defendants. In fact, we've been extradited.
You see her check her little can attack she had. Like, why can I attack this lady just in case? Because she wrote a whole slew of them. That's one thing that one of the reporters from behind her took pictures and was like, hey, she came ready to attack. She ain't come to really make peace or try to work with them.
Some of them back, as many as we can get, we're bringing them back to this country. That's how we're holding them accountable and locking them up for as long as we humanly can lock them up. And Director Patel, our National Security Division, have been working tirelessly on that. We have entire units working on that. I think the most
You feel like you've made better strides than we saw over the last 4 years?
We have made incredible strides. I'm sorry, I don't have the statistics in front of me. Yes, we have made,
I would love to get those from you. I want to make sure that we're doing that. I also obviously have worked diligently alongside Senator Blackburn and so many others to put the proper guardrails in place when it comes to social media to prevent these things from happening to our children, allowing them to still thrive online, but knowing the threats that are out there, it is incumbent upon us to actually do something about it. So I hope that those different pieces of legislation that would help keep kids safe, help give you additional tools. I hope that this body and ultimately Congress will.
Did you know that you can have permanent teeth in just 24 hours? That's right. Only 24 hours and your new smile is ready. And with affordable payment options, achieving your dreams.
Say your child has no right to privacy on the internet, and parents need to monitor what their kids are doing. Now, we all know that even elementary kids, school kids, so many of them have cell phones because they're at school.
Yeah, so one thing I'd say is, if y'all would like to watch this is going on right now. It's live, and the title goes as far as Pam Bondi finally reveals the name behind Epstein's death. And this is a part of Trump's Epstein Files N18G. So if you would like to watch a little bit more of this, you can. By the time you do watch it, it's probably going to be kind of old, but it was live at one point. This right here was a recap, to my understanding, of what she went through a month or so ago. But at the same time, let's go ahead and transition. And again, when we talk about the pacts between men and animals, and I like to think of it, the men and lions. Yeah, let's go ahead and dive into a little bit of that TikTok. You know, I like listening and watching, see what they talking about. Yeah, this is, I kind of like saying this. It's not basically saying like when it comes down to every day. Wait. everything redacted.
Finally, all of the information on all of these evil pedophiles right here at our fingertips. We get isn't some isolated incident where I'm cherry picking shit. The bulk of these redacted, and this isn't some. We get. Fine.
I think it may have been intentional.
Maybe it was intentional. She's talking about something related to the Epstein Files. I'm just going to let her cook for a moment. I'll be right back.
In the latest Epstein file release, the DOJ failed to redact a substantial portion of the redactions properly, meaning that the internet quickly figured out that they could simply unredact the redactions and see what was being hidden underneath. So we are either looking at new levels of idiocy and incompetence, or somebody did this on purpose.
So let's screw up a bunch of this. One of the examples is some of the documents that have black bars over some of the text. If you highlight all the text and hit copy and then paste it into a text document, you can see the words that are underneath the black bars because people are morons. She's saying, well, maybe not. Maybe that was intentional. Maybe they wanted that to happen. They aren't inept. This is like 4D chess. If it was intentional, you know who's not in on it? Donald Trump, because he is losing his goddamn mind. Now, 1 million more pages on Epstein I found. DOJ is being forced to spend all of its time on a Democrat-inspired hoax. When do we say no more and work on election fraud? The Dems are the ones who worked with Epstein, not the Republicans. Release all of their names, embarrass them. If by that you mean when you were hanging out with Epstein, you were still a registered Democrat, then I agree. But this guy just called it a hoax and said there are Democrats in there, release their names. In the same fucking post. Pick an argument, dude. Which is it? Can't imagine why Donald Trump is upset. Can't imagine why he would be worried. This is just one page. Guillotines don't care about what political party you're in. I stand on that.
I think it may.
Were you surprised by the number of photos of Bill Clinton in the Epstein files? And can you commit to their full release by the end of the year? Some of the victims were protesting that too many of them were redacted.
I know there are a lot of people that are angry about all of the pictures of other people, but I think it's terrible. Look, I like Bill Clinton. I've always gotten along with Bill Clinton. I've been nice to him. He's been nice to me. We've always gotten along. Respect him. I hate to see photos come out of him, but this is what the Democrats, mostly Democrats, and a couple of bad Republicans are asking for. So they give me their photos of me too. Everybody was friendly with this guy, either friendly or not friendly. But they, he was around. He was all over Palm Beach and other places. The head of Harvard was his best friend, Larry Summers, and Bill Clinton was a friend of his. But everybody was. I actually threw him out of Mar-a-Lago, and as a person that was in Mar-a-Lago, I threw him out. Mar-a-Lago. This is Mar-a-Lago. It's the hottest place.
CAP.
As a person that was in Mar-a-Lago, I threw him out. Mar-a-Lago. This is Mar-a-Lago. It's the hottest place I think it's the hottest place in the world, but it's the hottest place in Florida. And everybody would come here. He'd come here. We actually threw him out. But no, I don't like the pictures of Bill Clinton being shown. I don't like the pictures of other people being shown. I think it's a terrible thing. I think Bill Clinton's a big boy. He can handle it. But you probably have pictures being exposed of other people that innocently met Jeffrey Epstein years ago, many years ago. And they're, highly respected bankers and lawyers and others. And they'll end up, because of guys like Massey, who's a real lowlife, whose polls are down to about 9%, by the way, in the great state of Kentucky. If you look at Kentucky, Kentucky is such a great place, but I don't know, they've got a couple of people on there that are very strange in terms of leadership. But Massey's a loser, and he likes it, and that he works with the Democrats. He's just being used by the Democrats, because what this whole thing is with Epstein is a way of trying to deflect from the tremendous success that the Republican Party has.
Pressure is mounting on the DOJ to release the remaining Epstein files. How is the president reacting to this?
Well, Britt, this just is the problem that seems to never go away for President Trump, and he was lashing out about it in a post overnight, saying that now 1 million more pages on Epstein are found. DOJ is being forced to spend all of its time on this Democrat-inspired hoax. He noted that Democrats are, he wants all of the names released. He wants to embarrass Democrats and get back to helping the country. The radical left doesn't want people talking about Trump and Republican success. Only long ago, Jeffrey Epstein, just another witch hunt. But the point is, Trump is already in the Epstein Files. His name, his photographs, he's connected to this. Now, the likelihood of some sort of smoking gun coming out in one of these million pages is probably low at this point. But as long as it's still in the news cycle, it's not good for President Trump, who would rather be focused on, quite frankly, anything else.
Were you surprised by the number of photos of Bill Clinton in the Epstein Files? And can you commit to their full release by the end of the year? Some of the victims were protesting that too many of them were redacted.
I know there are a lot of people that are angry about all of the pictures of other people, but I think it's terrible. Look, I like Bill Clinton. I've always gotten along with Bill Clinton. I've been nice to him. He's been nice to me. We've always gotten along. Respect him. I hate to see photos come out of him, but this is what the Democrats, mostly Democrats, and a couple of bad Republicans are asking for. But no, I don't like the pictures of Bill Clinton being shown. I don't like the pictures of other people being shown. I think it's a terrible thing. I think Bill Clinton's a big boy. He can handle it. But you probably have pictures being exposed of other people that innocently met Jeffrey Epstein years ago, many years ago.
Were you surprised?
It's a clean one.
Man, I'm telling you, sound like Trump fighting for his life. Ah!
Yo, this ain't, yo. Is that Chris Tucker?
Yeah, that's
You know what's crazy? Anybody that was in any of these Epstein flights or anything that was literally there for like just whatever regular shit and didn't do no nut shit, they're all cooked. Even them niggas is cooked. Anybody involved, whether it was negative or positive, y'all.
The president was an accomplice to murder? I want to be really careful with this one. And also, make sure that people know this is not for the faint of heart. So, trigger warning. There have been a number of accusations and quite horrific mentions of the president in the most recent batch of the Epstein Files that the DOJ was forced to release. Right, and they've only released a small batch so far, but one of the documents that was just released was a complaint that was filed with law enforcement by a Jane Doe in 2020. She names Epstein and the current president and claims that they repeatedly paid her for intercourse in the 80s. When she was 13. When she was 13. And she says that at least on one of the occasions where he was present, she was pregnant and gave birth. And this is fucking upsetting. She says that her uncle killed and disposed of her newborn daughter in Lake Michigan.
Into the barely legal type. Like he liked 15-year-old girls. And I realize this is disgusting. I'm definitely not trying to make an excuse for this. I'm just giving you facts. That he wasn't into like 8-year-olds.
Is this all true? We know that the complaint is real, but we don't know if the events actually happened. The DOJ has come out and warned that some allegations, like forced intercourse, are unsubstantiated, but they haven't outright denied it, like they did some things, like a letter between Epstein and Larry Nassar. Nassar was the gymnastics coach that went to prison for similar crimes? Correct. The letter lays out some exploitations of the president, but the letter was actually sent after Epstein's death, and forensics say that the handwriting doesn't match. How would they even prove that the Jane Doe phone call about the stuff with the baby, that actually even happened? It's really difficult, because it's been 40 years. but they would need to get records that prove the president was there at the time, supporting testimonies from people that were present, or get birth records for a baby that then disappeared. It's the 80s. Not a lot of technology for tracking. The people that were there probably don't want to talk about it, and kids that are giving birth on a boat probably don't have great medical records or getting birth certificates. Exactly. SA can be difficult to prove, especially when it was that long ago. And that's why it's estimated that at least half, if not 2/3 of those kinds of crimes just go unreported because we don't listen to women. Yeah. So how do we know if it's true? Well, I think generally we should just listen to women. But also, another key criteria that law enforcement take into account is pattern of behavior. Well, I guess he's never actually been convicted of anything, right? No. But he has been recorded bragging about walking in on young women changing, grabbing women by the genitals, saying things like, "I moved on her like a bitch." He's been in countless photos with Jeffrey Epstein being quite friendly, and he's intervened in investigations into people like Andrew Tate, who's being investigated by the US government after being charged with trafficking in other countries. Oh, right. So, yeah, there's definitely a pattern. It's something.
Thank you.
Definitely a pattern.
Thank you, Mr. President. Were you surprised by the number of photos of Bill Clinton in the Epstein Files? And can you commit to their full... And were you surprised...
So what do you make of Trump being in the Epstein Files?
It's fake. All of it's fake. All those documents are fake. The photographs are faked. None of it's real.
But look at all the evidence
No, all of that can easily be faked. It's all a hoax. I mean, define a child, though. People were getting married at 13 back in the day. So it's kind of normal, you know?
You think that's normal?
Like, he liked 15-year-old girls. And I realize this is disgusting. I'm definitely not trying to make an excuse for this. I'm just giving you facts. That he wasn't into, 8-year-olds.
My grandma was 16. Are we really gonna crucify the guy over this?
So Trump's in the files.
What about the Democrats? Democrats are in the files. How many Democrats are in the files? Bill Clinton, Obama, are they in the files? How about the Democrats? How about Biden? Democrats in the files?
Okay, but what do you think about Trump being in the files?
I think about Democrats. I think about the Democrats are in the files. Epstein who? Hey, are eggs cheaper yet? Have we gotten our Doge checks? Yeah, I really don't care if he's a pedophile. I just like seeing foreigners get rounded up into vans. Oh my gosh, this is shocking. How did this happen? Who voted for that guy?
They finally released the Epstein Files.
But, according to what I read, this actually comes from Fox News. They said the Justice Department redacted the names and identifiers of victims. Fox News Digital has learned that the same redaction standards were applied to politically exposed individuals and...
So the people that we want to know, the people in our government we want to know, are doing this shit to minors. And we're on the files, are being redacted.
Government officials. What the fuck? Why would those same redaction standards be applied to politically exposed individuals? That's like the most important individual to be exposed in these Epstein files.
Exactly like I just said.
Ain't no way these are the files that they released. 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18. Is it just not loading or is it just redacted? Ain't no way they were like, here are the Epstein files, 55 pages of redaction, full-blown redaction. There are, this is the photo sets, right? That they recovered. Hundreds of pages are 100% redacted. Obviously, some of the redactions are made because they are, they have victims, the faces of victims. That's the reason why they don't show that stuff, right? But then there's also going to be redactions because, there are probably high-profile people that they don't want to fucking involve in this. And maybe even Donald Trump. There's information, not just photos, but information that they're redacting. And I think not all of these ain't way these are the files that they ain't.
He rocks him. It's a clean move.
and they're certainly shifting towards the
no
crazy
doubt.
Hawaiian, yeah. All even going into round 3.
Yeah, man. Shoot, that's crazy. Before we conclude what we got going on today, I'd like to say New Year's is coming. I do plan on doing a little bit more and deep dive into it. If you haven't already checked out the Executive Order Watch, where we broke down all of 2025, as well as all of the executive orders from all the previous presidents outside of FDR. FDR is a very special case. I do plan on doing that. That's probably going to be out before February, sometime in January. Look out for the FDR, and then that will be the final list of executive orders. He has like over 12 years and over like 4,000 executive orders, and it's a lot. But when we talk about all the executive orders that Trump has done, it's just in 1 year. He's done more in 1 year than he did his first 4 years. And I don't really foresee that slowing down. And one thing that a lot of people have noted, the experts have noted, is the fact that by him doing that, he really overplayed his hand a lot of times. Instead of him threatening to do tariffs in order to get something done, he's done it, and now China knows that he can't do it long term. And then on top of that, he is basically given a lot of powers like that we normally have as far as our money to these to countries like Argentina for like $20-40 billion, which is crazy because that money could be used towards our farmers, but instead we give it to competition. So before we get out of here, I'm gonna have to say, this is my rifle, this is my gun before we ride out. All right, let's do it.
One motivated Marine and his rifle can do. And before you ladies leave my island, you will all be able to do the same thing. Here's my rifle, this is my gun. This is for fighting, this is for fun. Here's my rifle, this is my gun. This is for fighting, this is for fun. Here's my rifle, this is my gun. This is for fighting, this is for fun. Here's my rifle, this is my gun. This is for fighting, this is for fun.
Killer of Baton Rouge? I knew me, I was gonna have some fun. You shut.
Into the barely legal type. Like he liked 15-year-old girls. And I realize this is disgusting. I'm definitely not trying to